Deferring 4% salary increase due in 2021 will cost the government more in the long run. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021, I am Rikisha St. Louis. The request by the government of Grenada to defer the 4% salary increase due in 2021 will actually cost more than if government paid the agreed-upon increases on time. Given the fluidity of the 2019 pandemic and the continuing widespread impact, government is at this point unable to ascertain the exact period of deferral. However, any delayed payment means that compounded interest will apply and the burden of retroactive pay arises. Head of the government's negotiating team, Honorable Oliver Joseph, said it is the first time since government returned to office in 2013 that it will have to resort to retroactive payments. Speaking on GBN's Beyond the Headlines program on Monday night, Permanent Secretary in the Department of Public Administration, Ms. Rhonda Jones, elaborated on this.
The truth of the matter is, deferring the payment indefinitely really is not in the best interest of the government, right? And that is simply because we have worked very hard over the years to move from a situation where we have to make back payments for personal expenditure. That was a very unhealthy period in our financial history. We managed to successfully move away from that type of negotiations, and we are now at the point where we were able to project and to budget for the increases in salary that would come during the course of the 3-year cycle. So at this point, it really is not a pleasant situation we find ourselves in, where we have to now go to workers and say in the middle of crisis, we are not able to honor our obligations to pay you the 4%. But at the end of the day, if we do not meet that obligation for 2021, we do have 8% compounded to pay in 2022. So it actually increases the debt burden for government to be able to honor its obligation the longer we protract on meeting that obligation.
The 4% wage or salary increase for public officers will add $13.2 million to government's annual wage bill at a rate of about $1.1 million per month. Ms. Jones explained that the true cost of wage or salary increases goes beyond the additional money public servants receive.
The real number is actually a combination of the 4% plus the 4% impact on pensions and the 4% impact on the social contributions that's payable. So what we are actually looking at, Odette, is a wage bill that is going to be $337.6 million for 2021. And let me break that number down for you. Salaries, wages, allowances would be $274.8 million. Pension payments would be $48.1 million. NIS payments would be $14.6 million for a total of $337.6 million. The 4% alone is valued at $13.2 million for 2021. So it is not just the salary that increases. There is concomitant increases to other types of compensation that is triggered by a salary increase.
Government first engaged the unions in 2020 when it analyzed the impact of the pandemic on revenue collection, combined with the unplanned expenditure necessitated, and determined that it would be a challenge to meet the additional recurrent expenditure. At a meeting of the social partners on Tuesday afternoon, the 4% increase was also an agenda item. Prime Minister Dr. The Right Honourable Keith Mitchell assured attendees that in seeking a deferral, government is not questioning the legitimacy of the increase for public officers, but rather it is seeking some consideration of government's inability to increase recurrent expenditure at a time when the COVID-19 pandemic has significantly impacted government's revenue collection. In the interest of full transparency, government has proposed quarterly engagements with the trade union representatives and the submission of quarterly fiscal statements on government's revenues. Continuing the news, Minister for Infrastructure Development Honourable Norland Cox says government is disappointed in the recent incident at the stadium car park, which left vendors and their produce exposed to the elements of the weather. During the government's post-cabinet media brief Tuesday, Minister Cox said no member of cabinet was aware of the removal of tents and other amenities provided for the vendors until late Monday evening. Explaining what government became aware of, the minister said the company contracted to provide tents, tables and chairs for the vendors since April 2020, removed the items while the vendors were on the compound selling their produce. Minister Cox described this as unfortunate and a deliberate attempt to embarrass the government.
In discussion, the Ministry of Infrastructure observed that the rate for the service provider, current service provider, was a bit high, and sought to negotiate and sought to look for other service provider. It was observed that another service provider was providing the service at a much less expensive or a cheaper rate than the current provider. However, the current contractor, while his contract was coming to an end, it appears that he probably was not happy that the decision was taken to not continue with him. As such, it appears that there was a deliberate attempt to create some discomfort for the vendors and to create some embarrassment for government, because the tents were removed while the vendors were using it. That is what it appears to us as government, and we are very disappointed by those actions.
He said government has been providing support for vendors since they were relocated in April to facilitate rehabilitation work on the St. George's Market, where they normally ply their trade.
We have been supporting the vendors. We have been paying for services for the rental of the space at the stadium. We have been paying for the tents and chairs, as indicated earlier. We have been paying for cleaning of the area. We have been paying for the skip rental as well. Just recently, as December, as just before the Christmas break, government took a decision, and myself, the Prime Minister, and the parliamentary rep, who's also the Minister for Agriculture, we visited the vendors. We met with them, we discussed with them, we hear some of the challenges, and a stimulus was given to each of those vendors. 11 of them received a cash stimulus, one-off payment in December.
The tents and other amenities have since been reinstated. Following Tuesday's press conference, Minister Cox paid a visit to the vendors at the stadium car park to hear their concerns and provide assurance that government will rectify the issue to avoid a reoccurrence. The Market Square renovation project is expected to be completed by March 2021. This is the National Report. The news will continue after the break.
Protect yourself and our community from COVID-19. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 70% alcohol. Use a tissue when blowing your nose, sneezing, or coughing. Immediately discard the tissue properly and wash or sanitize your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Let's do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. To stay up to date, visit the Government of Grenada's webpage or the Ministry of Health's Facebook page. For more information, contact the Ministry of Health's hotline by calling 53-VIRUS. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back. The Government of Grenada is providing clarity on the current state of emergency and the emergency powers COVID-19 regulations, which includes a curfew between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. daily. Erroneous reports in a television newscast on Monday have created some confusion among members of the public regarding the duration of the curfew. Providing clarity on the matter, Attorney General Dia Forrester explained that in keeping with Section 17 of the Constitution, the initial proclamation by the Governor-General when Parliament is not sitting lapses 21 days from the date of publication, unless approved by both houses of Parliament. Subsequent to the Governor-General's proclamation, the lower house met on January 15, 2021, and approved the resolution. When the Senate meets later this month, members will consider the resolution already approved by their parliamentary colleagues. Once both houses of Parliament approve the resolution, the proclamation of January 11, 2021 will remain valid for a maximum of 6 months. Both the Governor-General and the Houses of Parliament have the discretion to revoke the proclamation in accordance with the provisions of Section 17, subsection 3, subsection 4, and subsection 5 of the Constitution prior to the 6-month period lapsing. Such revocation will be provided as early as the circumstances permit in the best interest of the public and public safety. It is during this period that the COVID-19 regulations, which contains a curfew, amongst other matters, are applicable. However, the actual enforcement, adjustment, or removal of the curfew and other matters arising in the COVID-19 regulations will depend on prevailing conditions. The Attorney General explained that, and I quote, "The regulations are under constant review and will be amended periodically with the consistent aim of ensuring public health and safety. We thank everyone for their continued sacrifices being made and compliance with the regulations as we all perform our civic duty aimed at keeping each other safe," unquote. As the nature of this pandemic changes and the threat to lives evolve, the government must continue to take steps in the best interest of the public. The public is reminded to adhere to the COVID-19 protocols, maintain physical distance, wear a mask, especially when physical distancing cannot be maintained, avoid large gatherings, and wash hands and sanitize regularly. Finally, in the news, high on the 2021 priority list for the Ministry of Infrastructure Development is the SATE's Breakwater Project. The issue of coastal erosion has been plaguing the north of the island for years. Government intervened and constructed the breakwater, which has calmed the waters where it was constructed. The beachfront was restored and the businesses and houses in its direct path were also saved. However, further up on the beach, 8 families have been impacted by erosion of the seashore. Infrastructure Development Minister Honorable Norland Cox said government has engaged a coastal engineering company that will conduct a 3-month study on the area and will make recommendations, so that remedial action can be undertaken. He said they are awaiting a response from the procurement board so that work can commence as soon as possible.
The government, we have responded swiftly to address this matter. We currently have engaged a coastal engineering company who will come in very soon, hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, to conduct a study. The study will take approximately three months to complete, and thereafter we expect to implement work in terms of final response to that coastal erosion. Most importantly, we are advancing. We are looking at doing some remedial work to stay whatever coastal degradation that is taking place currently. So the Ministry of Infrastructure is working on that.
The ministry is working along with the parliamentary representative for the area to relocate the families and to provide other assistance to them where necessary.
We have, through the cabinet, took a decision to provide support, financial support for those 8 families or persons who will be required to relocate. So we are happy with that, and we are working closely with the parliamentary reps in the St. Patrick's area to have this matter addressed quickly. The recommendation is for relocation. The Ministry of Social Development is working with the families to initiate the relocation. However, I believe that 1 or 2 to 3 persons may opt for a unit at the recently commissioned housing scheme, affordable housing scheme in St. Patrick's. So those discussions are ongoing, but it is the recommendation that the 8 families be relocated. So work is ongoing on that.
During Tuesday's post-cabinet briefing, the minister also provided updates on other major projects, including the feeder roads, flood mitigation, and the Western Main Road. That story just ended the national report for today, Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. Let's recap the top story. Deferring 4% salary increase due in 2021 will cost the government more in the long run. On behalf of the entire news and production team, I am Rikisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.